Have you ever found yourself regretting your choice to go into medicine or your decision to choose whatever specialty you're in? Well, this is a very common sentiment that you're going to find online and with a lot of your colleagues. And for me personally, for a very, very long time, and even now, very frequently, I'll have these twinges of regret and I'll be like, man, I have so many friends who decided to be computer scientists and engineers, and right after college, they're already making six figures. They're able to travel the world and already owning nice cars, buying houses, really just able to get their life started and live out like their 20s early and get to enjoy the best years of their life. Whereas, we are stuck in medical school in the library and then get out, we go into residency and you're just stuck in the hospital all day and you don't get any income to really invest in anything. You don't get to travel around and really enjoy your 20s. And by the time you're finished with it all, you're already in your mid 30s and that's when you finally can start working. And so, there's a lot of reasons to have regrets about choosing medicine. There's just a lot of opportunity cost from choosing this field. But I feel like it's nice to have some good perspective sometimes. And, recently, I think lately, I've been feeling a little bit more happy with my decision to do medicine. And it's because of a lot of things. I've enjoyed the work a little bit more. I found it more fulfilling. But also, putting into perspective that a lot of people have really bad jobs, and there's a lot of times where you're comparing yourself to the upper echelon of people, the people who are making tons of money. You're comparing yourself as a internal medicine doctor versus like a neurosurgeon or orthopedic or plastic surgeon, and you're like, man, I should have just done something like that. But it's not all about like the money. You'll see when you take a look at some of these Reddit posts here. I mean, this is just a very common sentiment that's expressed on the subreddit. And so it's never enough. The grass is always greener. Hey there, I see a lot of residents here really focus in on how much they will be paid and have that determine if they're going to be happy attendings. The purpose of this post is really to say there is never a dollar amount that makes you feel 100% secure or extraordinarily successful if all you do is compare your salary to others. Money is important, but I really do encourage you residents to realize that an extra $100K per year might not magically make you happier and solve all your woes. And so this goes back into talking about choosing your specialty, because for me, I did very well in medical school and I probably could have done pretty much any specialty that I wanted to. But, I didn't do a ton of research and all that stuff. I wasn't gunning for all those crazy specialties early on. Anyways, I had a lot of my friends go into much more lifestyle friendly specialties, anesthesia, radiology, psychiatry, among my closest friends. And they have better lifestyles, or at least they're going to have better lifestyles, and they're going to be making significantly more than me. So, for example, if a hospitalist can be looking anywhere from like 200 to 280K a year, anesthesia, radiology, psych, they're all going to be making like 400K plus. And they have, an easier schedule, to be honest, a lot of times too, it seems like. Not only that, but I've heard some of them even getting offers for like 600, 700,000. And so it's like, wow, like, we all went to the same medical school. We all did like the same work. And yet, their work can be potentially valued 3 times more than mine if I'm making 200 and one of them is making 600. So it is something that it gnaws at the back of your mind. You're like, man, did I really make the wrong decision here, right? And this is Editing Conan here. And I know that obviously these numbers sound like astronomical and completely unfathomable to like the average American. And they are, that's kind of the point of this video, is that at some point in time, we start just really comparing ourselves to all of these very, very out there people and these out there numbers, when really, we have to look at our situation as a whole and realize that we are so fortunate to be able to make money and salaries like this. But I do have to say that still, it's not as high as, it sounds incredibly high, but because of all the opportunity costs that you go through in medical school, you're giving up 7 to 11 years of being able to work. And a lot of people graduate with like $400,000 in debt or so. So it really is not as high of a salary as, it sounds. A lot of doctors are actually not that well off financially because of just the length of the training and all the resources that have to go into it. And I'm sure many of you guys are kind of going through that same thought process as well, especially for those of you who chose family medicine or pediatrics. And I feel like you guys are honestly the most selfless people out there. Like, you guys are doing basically God's work. You guys are amazing people for choosing those specialties because they're known for their low compensation. And it's really sucky that you've done exactly what all these other people have done in medical school. And yet some people are going to be making $1 million a year and you're going to be making like $180,000 a year. This has been something I've really struggled with over the past few years, especially with the pandemic making housing prices go up and inflation skyrocket. My whole life, I thought that these high salaries would mean I'd have no worries. But new worries always come about as your life scales with the salary. 401k, backdoor Roth IRA, kids' college funds, childcare, home insurance, life insurance, health insurance, mortgage, home maintenance, car payments. But throughout the years, I kept comparing myself to my other med school colleagues. Reddit and social media even make you think this way. I see the otherworldly salaries with anesthesiologists making 400 to 500k, or some surgeons clearing that easily. I get envious and think, why didn't I go for anesthesia or radiology? I had the scores. Or, wow, if my wife and I did that, we'd make nearly $1 million a year. But then I compare my day-to-day life with theirs and I realize it isn't worth it. Some specialties don't have just a bad work-life balance. They have bad work environments, toxic ones. Maybe their patients are difficult or crazy sick. Maybe the support staff is negligent or non-existent. I contrast that with my 9 to 5 Monday through Thursday schedule where I have all weekends and major holidays off with no call. And I realize that there is inherent value in that as well. My team at work is great. We have a good time and work efficiently. So for those who are on the fence about choosing a lifestyle residency or subspecialty, I say go for it. So I felt like this was a nice post. You know, it isn't all about the money, and it's just so easy to compare your salary to the salary of another person and just be like, man, I'm just getting like gypped so hard. I made like the wrong decision. And, you know, in the long run, yeah, we are making financially maybe not as good of a decision, but there are so many other intangibles that we should keep in perspective that is what makes your job rewarding. And I think that's something you should always keep in mind. I think the sentiment he was talking about, like with the anesthesiologists and radiologists, is exactly so relatable. I think so many people can probably relate to such a similar thing. And like I was saying, even in college, it was happening when you're looking at all your engineering friends who are working at Google, Facebook, and Netflix and Amazon and making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year while you're going into like negative debt, paying like $80,000 a year for school. This person says, I appreciate this post. It's funny because all doctors are going to be in the top 5% of incomes in the country, but we tend to only compare ourselves to those at our levels or above and not realize how blessed we are to be making more than 95% of the country. And this is so spot on. The salaries that he's talking about in his post already are just so astronomically high compared to the standard population. But doctors being exposed, you know, primarily to other doctors are going to be like, oh my gosh, this is so much lower than all of my colleagues and my friends. And then you just get this sense of inadequacy, even though you're already higher than 95% of the population. And we had to keep in perspective that the general population, nobody's going to be pulling anywhere near these numbers most of the time. Yeah, you're going to hear about your friends like in investment banking who are like suddenly making like $800,000 a year or something, but like that's so rare. Like those fields are actually very, very difficult to advance in. And when you actually hear about it, it's like, wow, like residency is pretty bad, but at least you're guaranteed a good, strong salary afterwards. It's like guaranteed. Whereas a lot of these investment banking things, or even like people who work in the restaurant industry, there's just so many places, even people who are doing like hard manual labor, construction work, working multiple jobs. They are never going to be guaranteed to make as much money as physicians. So even if you are a pediatrician who's making like the lowest out of all the doctor colleagues out there, you are still making way more than all these people who are not as fortunate as, unfortunately. And this is something that's easy to become, you know, disillusioned with and out of touch with because you're just surrounded by all these people making such astronomically high amounts of money every year. I understand the good-spirited nature of this post, but you still have a household income of $600K. LOL, seems a little opaque. And then he says, that's kind of the point. I'm clearing over $500,000 a year as a household, and yet still there is a tinge of self-doubt that gnaws at the back of my head. I think this is why, this is like a key point. Like he knows that this is like a really ridiculous way to be thinking, and then he's telling us why it's a thing. And like we're always going to be comparing the grass, you know, from our lawn to the other person's lawn and just saying, oh, their grass is so much greener. And so this is something we should avoid doing. This post is so spot on, it's scary. Contrast this guy's life with mine. I'm a surgeon. I make $400K, more than op, but not by much. I'm also a brand new surgeon, so this is the floor. Ceiling for me will likely be $1 million when I make partner. But I am working like a dog. On Tuesday, I worked from 7 a.m. to 4 a.m., got 2 hours of sleep, then worked from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m., Still haven't recovered. That's so unsafe. What the hell? This is crazy. I get maybe 1 weekend a month when I'm not on call. I'm usually on call for all major holidays because I take call at about 5 or 6 hospitals. I'm on call about 20 to 25 days a month. All this to say, Op is right. The money isn't always worth it. I keep wanting to quit, but part of me wants to hold on for this big pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, while also contending with the fact that when I get there, they might pull the rug from under me. Crying in peds hemonc, sub 200K attending salaries, and all the cons you listed. When I see all this stuff about pediatrics, I'm just like, they're doing all the same training as us. If I did internal medicine and then hemonc, you could be clearing like 500K after that. But just because you decided you wanted to work with kids, you were automatically just doing all this extra training, and you're not even going to make more than a regular pediatrician. It's like, it's just really insane that some of these life decisions really dictate how much you're going to make, even though you're doing just as much work as everybody else. This is such a pointless post that added nothing and came off as a not so humble brag. You come from a place of privilege, and it shows. Congrats that you and your spouse make 600K and more than 99% of Americans. Congrats that you live in a high cost of living area and culturally diverse area and doesn't have to be in the deep South as an Indian. Congrats that you have a 4-day-a-week job and work normal hours without call. Sorry you don't get to afford that yacht and vacation home. You are in a place that many students and residents dream of. You should have no financial worries for the rest of your life if you know how to manage your money well. Everyone has the same worries you listed, no matter if you make 50 or 500K. I honestly, part of me does agree with this person because this person does seem really out of touch with our situation. But I also agree with the original poster so much as well, because this is something that commonly is going to affect anybody who's in the medical field as a physician, because these are things that come across your mind all the time if you're not in one of the highest paying specialties, and you think about how much you've given up just by choosing a certain specialty versus another. So yeah, I do think both of these people have valid points. I think the op has a good one because all these thoughts are going through our minds all the time, and it's a very legitimate concern. So this person says, this post was about making himself feel better. He is clearly having issues comparing himself to people who make more, and this is his way of being okay with it. I agree with it. It's his way of coping with it and kind of justifying it to himself. And it's an important lesson for us to know to not compare ourselves to other people so much, which is so difficult in this day now that social media is so pervasive. This is another similar post in the same vein as the previous one, but those who hate/regret medicine, are you traditional students? I've noticed a trend where non-traditional students typically are happy with their choice to pursue medicine, and traditional students, those who simply went from high school to college to med school with or without a gap year, curious what the trend is on Reddit. This was a really great post because it does show you that a lot of times we complain about our work in residency, and we do get overworked a lot, and we are put in really bad working conditions, and we have to work 30-hour shifts and not sleep and just a lot of really bad stuff. But again, like I mentioned earlier, it shows you that there are worse jobs out there that people are working even harder at, and they don't have a guarantee of success at the end of it. So yep, work in general is soul sucking. Don't expect to escape that outside of medicine. Went to med school at 28, worked blue collar jobs for 6 years prior to med school. I'm so effing happy with my choice. Love medicine, challenging and dynamic. The first physician in my family. And I agree. I feel like I've talked with many of my friends who are not in the medical field, and they kind of get, kind of jaded with their jobs. They don't feel like they're doing something fulfilling. And the thing with medicine is, yes, it's a very service-oriented, profession, but it really does give you a lot of value. Like, you feel like there are many moments where you do feel like you truly did make a difference in somebody or help somebody get better, and people express their appreciation. And that is very, very valuable. It's very rewarding. And so I think that aspect of medicine truly is something that's very, very exciting and just very nice about it. You don't get that in every kind of field. A lot of times you're just working for a big manager, a big CEO. And the other thing about medicine is you're constantly learning. You're constantly becoming a better doctor. Not to say that you're not doing that in engineering or something like that, but like every little thing that I study or I look up, it is making me better equipped to treat the next patient better, right? And so throughout my career, I feel like I'm going to be just getting better and better at treating patients. And that I feel like that is a very satisfying way to grow as a human in general throughout life, rather than just, working for a big corporation. And yes, I do realize that, medicine is a big corporation at this point too. So it is kind of working for a big corporation still, but still, we do get to luckily interact directly with patients still. Working in the real world puts a lot into perspective. Many jobs are mundane, highly political and subjective, and corporate with unfair structure. Medicine has its drawbacks, but overall a top job. Recession-proof, challenging, and can pretty much guarantee at least an upper middle class life if smart with finances. Not many jobs can make that claim. And yeah, reading something like that really puts into perspective how lucky we are actually to be in the field we're in. Absolutely. I just saw a thread in the med school subreddit saying how standing in the back of the OR for 8 hours a day doing nothing is a hell on earth I wouldn't wish on anyone. Like, really? A hell on earth to stand there bored in an air-conditioned room? Do you even understand how whiny that sounds compared to what most jobs in the real world entail? You think being bored for 8 hours is bad? Try digging holes and landscaping or sweeping tarmac for 12 hours a day in 105-degree weather. Try an 8-hour shift standing there racing as fast as you can to make people sandwiches. Try stacking shelves at a grocery store for 8 hours. I dare you. Some people just have absolutely no clue what the real world is like. You can always spot those who come from privileged backgrounds and never worked a job in their life before medicine. Counterpoint, the older you are, the more it sucks to play that submissive yes sir BS to literally everyone for 80 years of med school and training. I think that kind of submissiveness gets harder to swallow the older you get. Started med school at 30 after having been proud of my previous accomplishments before medicine. Yeah, I could totally see that. Say you're like 35 years old and then you have to start like treating all these people who are 10 years younger than you as like your seniors and your superiors. And the way that medicine is, it's very infantilizing. Like, it just makes you into this like baby, even though you're like a full grown adult. And so, yeah, something about medicine is you got to like kill your ego a little bit at the beginning, especially in medical school. Agree with this. Started at 29, now an intern at 34. Hate the infantilization in medicine. This is my biggest struggle in med school as a non-trad. I really had trouble being treated like a child, often by residents younger than me or attendings my age. Anyways, I just wanted to discuss this concept of the grass being greener on the other side, and just letting you know that, you know, whatever decision you did make, whether it be going into medicine versus whatever specific specialty you chose, you know, things will work out, and you're always going to be able to compare yourself to somebody whose situation is probably better than you. And heck, I know I do this all the time too. And, you know, like I mentioned before with my friends who are all in like kind of better specialties than mine. But, you know, what really matters is that you are enjoying the work that you're doing. At the end of the day, all of us are doing something that is far above, you know, in terms of like the benefits that we get, you know, the vast majority of Americans. And we are in a very fortunate and lucky situation. And so sometimes just having a little bit of perspective is helpful regarding that. So curious to hear what your thoughts are down in the comments down below. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and peace.